Welcome to I Love My HBCU ? The podcast where we express our undeniable love for HBCUs, but where we are also not afraid to address a few tough questions. So, sit back, learn a little, love a lot, and rep your HBCU. It's another episode, and it is always a good reason to love your HBCU. We have our resident guest. So if you have been part of our community, part of our family from day one, you have seen, I love to call him by his full government name, Chinedu Nwokeafor. You've seen him before. He has had several different types of conversations. Chinedu, is it fair to call you a social activist?
Oh, I don't know. I I give that answer because immediately I just thought of the word influencer, and I don't always know what those words mean or what's attached to that. Let's keep it at the proper noun. I am Chinedu. I don't.
You are definitely Chinedu. You are all things Chinedu, yes. So the reason why I asked if you would call yourself, let's just say activist. Maybe let's not add social activist. Let's just say activist, is because just to give a little bit of background for those who don't know, Chinedu was a student at the HBCU that I'm associated with, and he led a lot of activism efforts while he was there. Some of it even got national coverage over time. And it's one of the reasons why whenever we are itching for a conversation that we know is going to be raw, that we know is going to be honest, that we know is going to be absolutely unfiltered, we reach out to you, and you're always kind enough to say, let's talk about all of it. Which leads to this particular conversation that we're going to have today. We all of us, and by all of us, I was going to keep this to the United States of America, but as somebody who I'm a massive sports fan. If you know, you know, everything but baseball. Sorry. I am a massive sports fan, and because of some recent commentary with some athletes, this isn't just within the US for me, it's even a little bit international. But enough of us have been treated to tragic incidents, to non-tragic incidents associated with race. And you and I were having a conversation not too long ago, Chinedu, and I asked, why is race always on the table? That's literally how our conversation started. Because I hear a lot of people who question when something happens, oh, here they go again, talking about race. And so I wanted us to talk about it publicly, why we think, more so you, think race is always on the table when it comes to different incidents that occur. Most recently in the United States of America, a young gentleman by the name of Nolan Wells was having an Independence Day celebration with a few friends, and unfortunately his body was found, and he's deceased. We do not know any facts to that particular incident yet, so that's where I'm choosing to leave it. But it sparked, as do these incidents do, it sparked racial conversations online. And to get a lot less ambiguous, anyone who's following international sports, the World Cup is currently going on as we record this, and Kylian Mbappe, who is a French national and hence chose to represent France in the World Cup, he has Cameroonian heritage through his father, he has Algerian heritage through his mother, but a Paraguayan senator took it upon herself to be absolutely incendiary with racist commentary against him after France beat Paraguay in a recent match. So that one was directly racial, and of course sparked a lot of conversation. Kylian Mbappe gave a resounding response to that. Chinedu, why is race always on the table when it comes to incidents that occur like this ever so often in our society as the US and internationally? I'll be quiet.
I think I would say race always comes up because there is a supposed group of folks who believe that their superiority is enshrined in someone else's inferiority. So I believe, and I'm saying this from historical perspective, I believe it's always on the table because, in my opinion, it is a continued guilt. It's a continued guilt of a falsehood that is perpetuated as truth, right? And I always think about something my sister used to always say. She said, if Chinedu, if you're telling the truth, you don't need to make a whole bunch of explanations. He said, when you start talking a little bit too much, I can tell that you're lying. And the reason why I say that is because, if you are superior, let it speak, quote unquote. But I think the catch and play of this thing is there's a group of folks who have always believed that they're superior, but the basis of their superiority is how they could stomp on who they believe to be the little person. So I haven't said a race yet, but that is why I think it comes up, and I'm taking that from a historical significance. When you think about the Berlin Conference when they were divvying up Africa, it's the idea of we are going to go to this place and because we have our warships, we're going to do this and that. And it's a crushing only off of one basis, which then makes people feel like they are more powerful. So that's why I think from historical perspective, why race comes up. As we get deeper, I'll kind of go into how we get there now.
I look forward to that. Why do you think people outside those communities, and you and I, well, you are choosing not to mention any race yet. I
Mhm.
will mention a race when I find it necessary to do so. Not there yet, but I think I'm getting there. Um, why do you think especially whites often misunderstand about the emotional response that Black people have to these types of cases? And I'm being very specific. Listen,
Mhm.
my entire heart goes out to the families of the Nolan Wellses of the world who find themselves in a situation where they're dealing with something so personal and where facts have not necessarily been laid out. Not even necessarily facts, it's an ongoing investigation. Facts have not been laid out. Yet they find themselves in this whirlwind, this tornado of reactions and conversations from the rest of us.
Mhm.
Because if you are Black and you see the picture that all of us have seen, your mind has a reaction. You're just having questions as to the how, the why, the what behind it. And for a lot of people, especially if you go on socials, for a lot of people, it's emotional. They identify that we don't know the facts yet, but we see this picture and we've got questions. Why do you think that people outside those communities misunderstand the emotional response, or what do people outside those communities misunderstand about the emotional response? Because as a member of the community, my immediate response is, how could you not see that people are going to react to this emotionally? And it's hard for me to put myself in the shoes of those outside of my community. So take a stab, if you will. What do they misunderstand about the emotional response that we have?
I don't think they misunderstand. I think they understand. I think we misunderstand, and I'm going to tell you why. And I like to be historical. If you are describing an emotion, emotion is what's tied to a human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can't understand why I, a human, am sad over somebody in my community or somebody that historically has been underserved or over policed, if you can't understand why I have an emotional response, then it is clear that I haven't stopped being three-fourths of a person. It is clear that I am not as human as you. Because when I think about the dismissal of humanity, I think about people leaving church, praising God, and hanging another person, but not feeling anything because who they were hanging was not a person to them. So, in my
Wow.
opinion, when I see, we know the
Wow.
price, we know the price of, we say white tears, we know the price of a white woman, a white mother crying on TV, or a white person. And we know that that doesn't always effectuate towards us. When LeBron James speaks up, it's about, shut up and dribble, right? But then, our Justice Department is somehow trying to file a case against the quote unquote flagrant files of WNBA star Caitlin Collins, or whatever. Caitlin, can't remember her last name, but she
Caitlin
plays the white young
Clark.
lady who played WNBA. And it's like, it makes you wonder. And it's like, if we're all human, our our experiences should be the same. Our pain should be the same. How many Ukrainian cries equal a cry of a Congolese? And if you put it together, the only way that it makes sense, at least to me as a salient human being, I would think, is that you do not equivocate life to me. And I think a lot of times when African Americans or Black people or people with darker skins, or even to a certain extent certain immigrants, I think when we do well or when we survive, heavy on the second word, it's more of a shock. How could y'all still be here after all we did and you all are still here? That's what I feel. And I think it's a constant recourse of trying to dehumanize people as if my humanization comes from your definition, from your decree. Those are my thoughts.
And I listen, this episode is about hearing your opinions, your perspectives, and your thoughts. That's what this episode is. It's not about mine. I'm just here to, query. You heard me say wow quite a few times when you gave the go to church, worship, and then hang somebody, but not connect. My words now, not connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it made me think, well, shouldn't say of course, but it made me think of the Dutch Reformed Church and the association they had with slavery and so many other things. And again, it might be because of the belonging that we have. It's hard to reconcile those things for me. It's hard to reconcile those things for me.
Mm-hmm.
You always go to historical context, and I appreciate that. Is it possible to balance healthy skepticism with the historical context?
What do you mean?
So, you've broken down the historical context in
Mm-hmm.
that particular example. The people in the world, sometimes I'm one of those, hence my heavy sigh. There are people in the world who will hear all of that and still say, but shouldn't we still give the benefit of the doubt? Hence the healthy skepticism that these aren't always intentional acts. These are still coming from a human place, and
No.
we shouldn't.
Yep, I'm going to interrupt you. No. I'm going to tell you why. 9/11/2001. By 9/12/2001, every Muslim was a terrorist, as far as we were concerned. Every single one. Until this day, we still, I believe it was yesterday, um, they were breaking ground of 2 World Trade Center. It's the last building to be built on that place, on that spot in New York.
By
And of
yesterday,
course,
because by the time our audience sees this, yesterday will be July the 9th or
something.
July the
Okay.
8th,
So
sometime early July. Go ahead.
on July 9th, yes, it was dug out, the little shovel and digging. It was the groundbreaking. You all know how that goes. And the building that's going to be erected on that spot is the American Express building. And, Mayor Mamdani, he's just doing what every man. I mean, we've been cutting ribbons and digging things since
Of
forever.
course,
It's just the American way.
it's ceremonious.
But look at the comments now, and I believe the comments of the people are the thoughts of the people. It's not everybody, but it tells you something. People are people are making terroristic comments because he's Muslim, right? Oh God, y'all look up for planes, all just ignorant stuff. And I can say this is generally ignorant, but then we hear Islamophobic statements from our own president, from folks in the Republican Party. We hear disrespect
Absolutely.
towards
These are
Ilhan
all
Omar,
truth.
back to Somalia. So
Yes.
this is my thing. Why does it get to be different, right? And 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 in my opinion, when you look at statistics, anti-Semitism is on the rise. It's a huge, huge issue in our country. But
Factually.
there's a never againism when it comes to that. And there's a are you sureism when it comes to anything else. And it just makes me question, because what I find interesting with anti-Semitism on the rise, which is very dangerous, what I find interesting is if we are only qualifying one thing as true hate speech or whatever, you're almost low key, as the young folks will say, promoting the others, right? Unknowingly, right? Because you're only saying that this thing is the only thing that qualifies for this, but all of these doesn't. And I'm not saying that this is what folks, as in folks from the Jewish community, are doing. No, it's not what I'm saying. But I'm just looking at it like that. I feel like it's always whataboutisms for everything else. It's hard to be skeptical. One issue. I had or have a close friend who is of Islamic faith, and I remember being a young boy, and the young man told me, "Should I change my name? Would that be more accepting?" Even as an adult, we're talking about 15 years after 9/11. I'm speaking now. Still, should I change my name if I want to get a job with the government? You know what I'm saying? So there is no skepticism over here because I've seen the product. We know how this country works. I've seen what we've done. So no, there's no skepticism. And here's even the worst part. Even if the idea of the Nolan situation, let's say hypothetically, because we don't know anything, but let's say we're all wrong as Black people. Doesn't that say a
Absolutely.
damn thing about that's the first place we go to? Doesn't that say something? I think we forget that, open up your science book. Trauma is transferred through the DNA. These things aren't fake. Even as a law abiding citizen, when I see the police, my stomach turns, right? Even though I know that they're quote unquote sworn to protect, but I know that there's more protection for them, qualified immunity, than there is for me. So please, as the young people say, miss me. I don't know if I could be skeptical. I just don't
So
know.
you don't allow for healthy skepticism when it comes to that. At
Not
least
when
not
it
as your
comes to
first
Black people.
response. Not
Mm-mm.
when it comes to Black people. Not when it comes to Black people. Listen, those are your opinions, and I respect it. Do you find
Mm-mm.
go no, go ahead, please.
I
Go
do.
ahead.
And it's not just my opinion. Check data. Check the data of why I can't be skeptical. Like I said, what is the price of a Congolese dead baby compared to a Ukrainian dead baby? How much money have we given to Congo to help? How much money have we given to Ukraine? What are the differences? Palestine, Israel, what are the differences? I think that's my thing. Don't take my word for it. Look at just the data. Just look at the data. The defunding of HBCUs, the need for HBCUs in the first effing place. You know what I'm saying? So that's my skepticism comes from. It's all going to be in the data and the dollars for me.
You mentioned HBCUs. This is I love my HBCU question mark, and I appreciate that. Listen, you literally. I think HBCUs are always going to matter. I think HBCUs are always going to be necessary. So I don't need to ever ask that question. And the way you juxtaposed between both, you made a statement first, and then the very next statement was, that's why we have HBCUs. Do you think spending time at our HBCUs and in that environment actually changes how graduates navigate conversations about race?
Absolutely.
In what way?
I think it depends. It could go in both ways, right? And I hate when people believe that at an HBCU we skew one way. That wasn't
We
my
do
experience.
not.
We do not.
We do
Um,
not.
because also the older you get, you realize that it's not a Democrat, Republican, right or wrong. Sometimes it's just a money thing. Sometimes it's just a power thing. But I think what HBCUs, in my opinion, what they do is they, for one, if you're a black person, it would probably be the only time in your life that you are in a high functioning city biome of black excellence in theory that you didn't have to be super wealthy to obtain.
Hmm.
So, especially at that young age. Um, and within that space, we're talking about world class educators, world class facilities, and world
Absolutely.
class experiences. And more importantly, it's a convergence of all of those things. It's a jambalaya, if you will, of different flavors. And I want to make this joke, but it's very important. I feel like you may come into an HBCU jollof rice and you leave jambalaya. And I say that is that they're both kind of the same thing, right? But the difference is it's the idea of keeping the culture together within you while leaving with different flavors and different tastes and different alterations, which is why the HBCU continues to be important because in a world that is shutting you away, in a world where the things that you admire are
Hmm.
being a bit wiped away or canceled or being removed or repossessed or bought, BET, there needs to be a space that you can be the main character.
Hmm. Hmm.
Wow.
No one's ever said those words,
I know. I
but
just
I think
wowed me.
it's what they mean. You just heard yourself. You just heard yourself. Like I stopped. I'm writing. Like I'm writing a lot of what you're saying down, trying to get as much of it down so that that's how I come up with my follow up questions. Is making sure I listen to what the person is saying. And I stopped because I was like, listen, Tosin, the 130 something conversations that you've had on this podcast, I know there have been more than a few that have tried to articulate that at an HBCU is where you get to be the main character, and everybody there is the main character
At the same time.
at the same time, and that hardly ever happens. I had to let that sink in. I'm sorry. Listen, I'm a product of an HBCU, so even if you don't like the words coming out of our mouths, I had to let that sink in. That no matter whether you liked your experience, whether you did not like your experience, whatever you did afterwards, whatever you did before, that's one of the few places and the few times in your entire life, as a Black person especially,
Mhm.
well, we're all the main character. Oh, that resonated for me in a deep way, and I appreciate it. It's also a good place for us to just pivot ever so slightly. Thanks. He's giving himself a pat on the back for those who
No,
are only
I was actually saying thank God.
for those who are only listening and not watching, go and find a visual representation of our podcast somewhere so that you can see how Chinedu is beaming at his words. But I listen. I love our rapid fire. I'm going to throw a rapid fire at you that is specific to this conversation. So,
Okay.
in one word or short phrase, Chinedu Nwokeafor, in 67 seconds or less. Equality or equity?
Equity.
History or hope?
Hope.
Hope. Representation or ownership?
Ownership.
Ooh, dialogue or protest?
Protest is dialogue.
Listening or speaking?
As a black person speaking.
Anger or grace?
Anger.
Anger. Justice or reconciliation?
Justice.
Jesse Jackson or Martin Luther King Jr.?
Malcolm X. Mm,
That's okay. That's
that's my
okay.
answer.
That's okay. That's your answer. Time's up, but I'm going to ask you to honor us with a song that you feel represents our current state of racial conditions in this country.
Oh, what's the song called? But I'm gonna sing it. DMX. Y'all gonna make me lose my mind. Up in here, up in here.
Not for the same
Let me tell
reasons,
you.
but that is one of my favorite songs.
Mm,
DMX is one of my favorite artists, followed by Ti. But that's one of my favorite. I know people always get surprised when I say that, but it is the truth. But yes, okay, okay. Listen, interesting rapid fire responses. I'm not coming back to any of them because one of them alone with Chinedu could be
oh,
an
please.
hour-long conversation. We're not going there.
Yes.
I do want to find out from you, Chinedu, what's the hardest conversation about race that you've ever had?
The hardest conversation about rape. And I mm, I'm taking several breaths because there is an idea, an ideology that what I'm about to do, we shouldn't do outside of company, but fuck it. So the hardest question or the hardest conversation I ever had about race is with my race. It's with the people that I'm supposed to be fighting with. We're fighting together to fight against, the actual problem. Um, but I'm fighting. I'm. It's like It's an inner fight. We haven't quite made it to the enemy because it's why do you get to be or you're too no you're gay you're Muslim but you're it's this idea of not being pure enough. And I'm going to say something that might be controversial. Um, and I don't want to say I don't care. I just want folks to listen to me deeply. During this whole Grand Platinum situation with him dropping out, I noticed something. People kept just
So,
saying,
for those who don't know, Grant Plattner is was as of July,
seven.
early July,
Mhm.
was a senatorial candidate, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was running for Senate, right? In Maine, right? Is it Maine?
Yes.
Yes. Running with the hopeful run against Susan Collins, if I'm also not mistaken. And due to some accusations recently, sexual allegations, I don't want to call it rape, but I think that's what it was. But the data is out there, or the research, the accurate research is out there, thanks to New York Times and the rest of them. There was a CNN interview, and there was a person who was in a relationship who made accusations. She was not the only one. There were others. There was a lot of pressure, and he dropped out of the race. Just for those who need context. Go ahead, Chinedu.
Thank you for that. it's this conversation of, the Democrats need to find somebody who just has such a clean record. And I think because I'm a poet, I take these things very literal and metaphoric, and it's just like human beings can't be clean, right? Because we're all sinners if you're a believer in a sense. And this is not an idea of defending anything that Platinum was accused of or not accused of. It's just this idea of everybody, it's the Obamification. Everybody's looking for the unvarnished or whatever human being. And it's just like, but then that's not humanity. That's not real. That's not real. And I brought that up to come back to my example of my issue with race is everyone's looking for who didn't do this or who is hiding that better or who didn't. And I just don't. In this world where mental health is out of this world, in this world where, as an African American, as a black man, where chips are stacked against me 106 ways,
Mhm.
I none of us might be as clean as the other, right? And I'm not here to defend a cleanliness, but I know that if I'm even slightly dirty or
Hmm.
different, no matter how many times I cry and say I just like to drink beer, I won't be led into the Supreme Court and voted in Brett Kavanaugh, right? You wouldn't even need a Blasey Ford to get rid of me. It's the stench of he did it, right? So I think that conversation of race is it's a hard one to have with people who look like me because unfortunately, I have to say it, white supremacy is so endemic that it tends to affect black people harder than it does whites.
Hmm.
It tends
Hmm.
to it tends to Ben Carsonify. It tends to can't think of his name Byron Donaldsify, and the rest of them. It tends to do that to us even harsher, where we will find deeper allyship, respectfully, in the people that we are actually needing to fight. So my hardest conversation about race is with my race, because, and I don't blame it on us. To be very clear, what I will
Mm,
say is
mm,
that white supremacy is as effective as air, where you inhale it without thinking and you exhale it without blinking. Like it's there. It's all around you, effervescent. Um, and I know that that's the cause of that, but that is my most difficult conversation in regards to race.
You
Sorry,
just
sorry,
said
black folk.
white
I said it outside
supremacy
the cookout.
is as effective as air. You inhale it without blinking. Okay. That's another conversation for I mean, no, seriously, it's why we always bring you back, regardless of what people might think. It's we don't love Chinedu any more than we love our other guests. Sorry, Chinedu, but we don't. But you have a lot to share that you don't mind sharing and you don't mind speaking on, and I really do appreciate it. There
I
is a
do. I'll make it 20 seconds. I have to be honest. I do mind, and what you all are seeing in real
hmm.
time is me kind of looking up for help. And I'm a believer in God, and I ask in my head like, can I and should I? Because I am actually scared. But then it's happening right now. Something comes in me, and it just I get the goosebumps, and
And
I
you
get
just express it.
cold, and it says do it, and I do it, regardless of what I might be giving up for doing it.
I I'm glad you interrupted me to share that. I call you an advocate. It may not necessarily be a label you like, but there to me there has to have been a moment in time in your life, or maybe there's several moments in times in your life where you transformed from somebody with just opinions into somebody who felt called to advocate, somebody who felt Guys, where's the action? What are we going to do about these shared opinions that we have? If you have a moment in time where that occurred, where it's like, I can't just have these opinions, we should do something about it, share it with us. If not, I'd just like to know what it feels like. Because I said you don't mind sharing. You corrected me like, no, I actually do. But in real time, I find I can't just be quiet. I have to do something. What does that feel like? Do you feel there'll be retribution for the words that you would say? Do you feel you would get cancelled? Like I'm curious because you're not the only ones that have these thought processes, but very few of us speak out about it.
I don't worry too much about cancellation because I know that I was subscribed by an almighty God. So I don't worry about the cancellations, but I do get a little fearful, and I always have. Like, I am kind of transported back to rest his soul, another black boy, Trayvon Martin. It's 2012. It's the first time I would say as an adult that I spoke up. And as I'm talking to you, I can see where I was.
Hmm.
And it's the first time I ever held a microphone and spoke to a group of people in my life, and I didn't prepare. I like to say this to everybody: I never prepare for speaking. I let God do His thing, his or her thing, they or theirs things, however you want to look at it. But I just know. You know what's interesting? When you look at an artist of any type, whether it be
Mm-hmm.
an artist of finances, some people who do day trading. You think about Wolf of Wall Street, or you think about a Stevie Wonder, right? He's one of my favorites because he's blind, right? So because he's blind, a lot of his expressionism is extra, right? So you see him, he's doing his thing and he's moving his head, he's feeling it. Or, the guy from the Wolf of Wall Street, he's it's emotion, right? But what is actually happening is, in my opinion, and I'm not comparing the two, but I think it's an urge, something at least in their mind that is a natural sense of, I'm not trying, I'm called to do. Now, this
Okay.
do can be used for good or evil. I want to put that out there. That's what I've always felt. Like, I've always spoke up, even since I was a young boy. I really much got in trouble a lot, but as an adult, um, I just, when that Trayvon Martin thing happened, I think I was 19. I knew, and it's not just me. Shout out to, I gotta call this guy's name, Monzona Whaley, who got me involved. But we just said that, what happens to us if we let this go by? I think it was Maya Angelou that said something about, when you let something come into your house, then it penetrates your curtains, then it penetrates your couch, and then it eventually penetrates you. If we let that thing go by and did nothing, then we are also tacitly accepting that that thing is okay. And that's what I feel like advocacy is. It's saying that even if I'm not able to get to that mountaintop with you that I see, this isn't okay.
This isn't
And
okay.
I use my big mouth for every stupid other thing in the world. I believe that, like, just talking too much and being very loquacious. But when it comes to advocating, I just think it's the right thing to do. And I think, for me personally, it's such a battle because I think about every future opportunity that I'm looking for, at least that I know of, that I might be shirking.
Mm, mm.
But I I can't accept that payment. I can't accept that payment on the backs of my people, right? Because then it becomes okay. Or then I become desensitized to that feeling of right or wrong. And I use that same mindset when I do right or wrong to check myself and bring myself back. Like, hey, you know better, right? Because ain't nobody perfect over here, okay? But that is my thought. Like, that's my experience. Uh, and since that day, there's a picture And it's a panoramic view that I look at that picture of that day in front of a building that doesn't even exist anymore, Morgan's campus, I believe. Um, I remember just looking at the group of people looking at me. And what I felt in that moment is like they were telling me, you are doing this for us.
Mm,
So I
mm,
always remind myself that the beautiful, unfortunate, but beautiful part of like this thing, it's a self-sacrifice. It doesn't, you know, doesn't really benefit me. I may lose all opportunities that I may have. And the other people that are thinking about it but won't say it might, move forward. But I did it for us. And what I do know is history and the future is always argued by looking at the past. So I do my best.
I wrote down, well, there's something you said. I saw, again, hopefully people are not just listening to you, they're watching you. You made a lot of movement. You squirmed your face at times, and it led me to wonder about exhaustion. Is it exhausting to always have race somewhere in the back of your mind when things happen around you? Is it exhausting? I'm not saying, do you find it exhausting? I didn't say that. Is it exhausting to always have race somewhere in the back of your mind as all these things happen around you?
Yes, it is. Because I am extraordinary because I'm Chinedu, as well as being black. Just the same way that in that same vein, some people are not extraordinary at all. They're just white. Simple as that. And I mean, which one we say? I think it's something that I don't want to have to always consider from their vantage point. When do I get to be Chinedu? Just as is, you know? And that's all of us, right? You know, when did I stop? It's the question that you ask, when do we stop being cute? Like I I have little nephews and I'm always thinking, because they call me Farrakhan in the house, and I take it as a badge of honor. But I'm always thinking about when it happens. When do I have to tell them that they're black children
Mm,
and what that means? And I don't want to keep thinking about it. I don't. I don't. Data. I'm not going to stop saying the data and the dollars have to match, right? When we are competing at a high level. We're competing at a very high level, but you're underfunding our schools. Sometimes when we're coming for the high positions, we talk about meritocracy. Kamala Harris, you see who she went against? No matter how you feel about her, let's talk about merit,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? So I feel like you all won't let me stop talking about it or thinking about it and misconstruing when I should think about it because it's, oh, there they go with race again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Until somebody's in Fells Point in Baltimore, Maryland, at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and there's a group of young people, then all of a sudden we want to talk about race. Nobody minds it.
Mm,
But when
mm,
HBCU say we
mm,
need money to educate black lawyers, doctors, engineers, oh, why can't we educate everybody?
mm.
It's exhausting because I'm trying to convince, and I mean this earnestly, I'm trying to convince a people who do not believe I should exist. That is what the data is saying. That is what the dollars are saying. Because if it says it costs $10, using this as an example, to help black mothers or help black fathers or help black children, and you only give me 36 cents, then you've told me that who I am or what I can be is less than. And it's not that I'm not intelligent. Again, I'm very intelligent, but I can't be, I just, sometimes I want to emulsify myself in my own skin and just not exist as anything. because it's frustrating. Because I have to explain. Sometimes I want to be white is to not explain. To
That is
not
so
explain.
true.
And when I go to Nigeria, sometimes I've heard a Nigerian that is more interested in being or learning or being around or confiding with or learning cultures of white America than they are of the black person that looks like them. That's powerful. No explanation. To just exist without thought. I have headaches in my sleep from being black. And I wear it honorably, but my goodness, it's frustrating. How ineffective is that thought process if we didn't have to worry about racism? I can be focused on solving things. It's going to end you here. Garrett Morgan, I believe it was in Chicago, where Garrett Morgan's a black inventor, where I think they had struck a gas pipeline and people kept going in there and passing out. Garrett Morgan walks in there with his gas mask. He was able to bring people out, right? Because he invented a gas mask. Fire department, police department, city, they all refused to buy it. So then he had to hire a white man to pose as the salesman and he as the assistant. And now we see gas masks in every. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm saying. It's exhausting. So when I make these statements, it's not based on fantasy. It's exhaustion. And that thought process has not changed. No matter how much further we've come as a people, the goalpost is invisible. It can be set wherever the hell the people in power want it to be. It's an exhaustion. But in every lifetime, I still want to be black.
I have so many more questions based
Because
on
I
what
feel
I've
like I
heard you
talk too much.
say.
I know.
No, you
I
do not talk too much. And I'm just going to ask them rhetorically. You don't have to answer them. You really don't, because there's a lot that you've said that brought up those questions. And I don't even want to say it's a question. It's a queried thought. As you were
know.
talking, I'm going to quickly read off a couple of questions that came to mind as you were talking. Is silence about race ever productive? Again, all rhetorical. Don't answer them. Don't. I know he wants to. If you see him, but these are the things that came up in my mind. And I always like to show people that I'm not making this up. Oh gosh, will it show it? Yeah.
So,
Bad handwriting, but I write a lot when people are on this podcast because you guys drop a lot of gems. And so these are just going to throw them out. Do Black Americans experience a different level of situational awareness than most people recognize? A queried thought. You don't have to answer it. What standards should we be applying in order to shift the conversation from it being about race all the time? And that came to my mind when you asked the question about if it's been proven that it will take $10 for X and then you give 37 cents for it to happen, or 36 cents, or whatever the number it is that you gave. That was just ludicrous. But I do want you to answer this question. My last question.
sure.
Do I want him to answer this? I'll ask it. Because I think it's ludicrous as I say it, and that's why I called them queried thoughts, right? But there's still things that I was querying in my head. Some people genuinely believe in America that America has moved beyond race. Like, they genuinely believe that. Even though the data shows us that no. Even for those of us, those including myself, who sometimes don't want to talk about race, the data shows us no, America has not moved beyond race. Why do you think those people see the country differently? The data tells us that America has not moved beyond race. I don't care what you think about race. The data tells us it hasn't. But some people genuinely believe that America has moved beyond race. Why do you think they see the country differently? This could be another one of those queried questions that you don't necessarily have to answer.
I have a dual thought on that. I think
Okay.
some people do believe that we move beyond race because they don't know. I
Okay.
do believe in that ignorance,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you want to test American ignorance, just have anybody in the World Cup that's not from America ask an American a question, and we'll see. You'll see. Um, but then you know what I also believe, very sinister.
Oh Lord.
That's how you keep power. Just pretending. Childhood tit for tat. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you
Mm,
did. No, I didn't.
mm, mm.
That's because eventually somebody's going to get tired. And even the person who said that, yes, they did, if I know I didn't enough, yes, I did, or yes, you did, might start believing, you know what?
Well,
Maybe no, he
maybe.
didn't. Maybe no, he didn't. And I also think it's a the beauty of power, and it's not in America. So I'm going to leave America alone for 10 seconds.
Please do.
Let's go to Britain, America's bastard father. When you look, and the reason why I bring that up is because I'm Nigerian and I know a little bit about Nigeria and British colonial rule. When you know something about power, at least white power, for what I have seen, they never let go. They change terms, they change tactics. Because if you look at the idea of white supremacy, it's not about free or unfree, it's about power and domination.
Mm,
So we know this from chattel slavery to Jim Crow, mass incarceration, war on drugs, and even the digital divide. That's where we are now, right? Even the infiltration of music, you know, hip hop as a ballad of the battle, and all of a sudden here come see because the thing about it, like I said, it always goes back to control. It's control, and I always say white supremacy, the way it works, like I said, making it like air, right? It says like air. You don't gotta see it, but
mm-hmm.
it's there. It goes from wired to wireless, right? Where the idea becomes less of I have to really implement this. Okay, now I can just drop this thing here and walk away and just watch and see what happens. We know what our CIA has done. I'm not making this up. Y'all saw that they tapped Martin Luther King's phones and even the Nation of Islam. Um, but all of a sudden, somehow, that was then in the 60s and 50s and 70s, no internet. But all of a sudden, we can't figure out somebody who's going to quote unquote attempt to assassinate the president or storm the Capitol on January 6th. We with all the technology we have now, but they were tapping phones then to make you think. But it's a control, it's mechanisms. So I believe that a lot of folks who uh, insinuate or instigate the idea of it's not happening is because also you being in a fight mode also helps the plan because then it goes to the people who actually don't know what's actually going on and they can say, and this is why you need more protections. They're going to take your wives and rape them. They're going to take your kids. They're going to so it works both ways. And it's unfortunate. Like I don't sometimes I say, since everybody in this country is such a Christian country, according to let the government tell it, sometimes I wonder if it's only an act of God, an act of some great flood that might change humanity because this structure, this structure doesn't change. This structure where we we go on ad nauseum about freedom, Everything's about freedom. Everything's about freedom, 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 freedom. But then we still slowly overtake other people's lands or build bases all over the world. Freedom, though, strange to me. So, like I said, I take it from a two-placed approach. There are people who just don't know, right? Because I know Oklahoma's 48th in education, and I know that's purposeful. So there's people who don't know. But then there are also the people who do know, the ones that are coming to DC and flying out every weekend. They know very, 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 very well. But they have to keep the game going, keep the illusion. It's an illusionary feeling of creating chaos, which is why, get out, no immigrants. And then this one moment is no immigrants. And the next moment is like, white women have more babies. And where am I going at? I'm not going to say everything. I just need people to do some adding and subtracting. It's illusionary. That's what I think.
This is my last question. I want you to actually end the episode for me with this particular phrase. Yes. Race will stay on the table until
we stand up from it. I think, and again, I told y'all, I'm a poet, so I'm metaphorical. You know the interesting thing about a table? It has dimensions, right? And race is such a dimensional thing to look at: white, black, brown, whatever. But when you think about all the complexities of humanity, if we just stood up from this table, we could get a lot more done. And standing up from this metaphorical table means just look at all the other things that we have to offer to the world, to society. It blows my mind that we can send people to the moon. To the moon. It blows my mind that there are glasses for people who have terrible visual acuity and all of a sudden they can see. That's what we do when we stand up. We help everybody because somebody needs our help. But when we sit down at this table, all we do is bloviate, excogitate how one is better than none of us are better or bigger than God. How about that? Where can God be contained at your table? Uncontainable. So
last
what is
real
the point?
question.
That's the real question.
Here's the last real question, because I know you're going to give us a little bit on this, and I'm conscious of your time. Are HBCUs at the table, or have they left the table? And the table we're talking about is a table of race. You said, when I said race will stay on the table until, and you said until we stand up from the table. Those were your words. And that is such a multifaceted response. That could be its own episode, be its own 1 hour conversation, because there's a question of who are you asking to stand from the table? Who are you asking to see others as multidimensional? Using your words. So, in that respect, are HBCUs at the table? Have they stood up from the table? Should they stand up from the table? Using your analogy.
It's a tough one because I'm thinking about, rest his soul, Dr. Earl S. Richardson, so I'm going to disagree with something that he might say. I think HBCUs should ponder more on the purpose of coming to a table to begin with. Because what I believe, what I know, is there is a lot of power in our people. So when you even said HBCU, I then had to have a question. Are we talking about students or the administration? Because those are two separate questions.
Absolutely.
That's a tough one for me. But what I would say, the reason why I said the thing about pondering, we have to remember what matters the most. giving our kids the best, education that we can give? Are we going to sacrifice culture for condominiums, right? Building these wonderful new housing structures, these brand new edifice. But can your student tell you what the school was founded upon? So I think HBCUs need to have a reckoning within themselves, right? Before we even approach a table, we have to have a reckoning in ourselves of what are we HBCU in name only? Where are the civil rights movements being led by those students? I would say, and I have said before, seems like when we had less, that's when you had the Reed's drugstore sit in Morgan State University in the 40s, or what happened in, I think it's Greensboro, South Carolina in the 50s. So it's a very interesting question, because now that money has entered the room, the culture is being commodified. And in that commodification, back to what I said about hip hop earlier, it begs the question: is this because of the culture or the love of it, or is it for the love of money? So I don't know how to fully answer that question. That's a difficult one.
I appreciate it.
But I would challenge to your listener: the best person to answer that question are you, students, because what that HBCU is will always be determined by you. You shape the culture. You carry it forward. You create it. No administrator has ever created HBCU culture, ever. It's always been students. So I'm an alumni. Anyway, I have graduated twice. So I am posing it back to you all. What do you believe the HBCU should be doing at that table? And should we be at their table or our own?
So I wish people could see my notes. I was going to ask you, since you admitted the levels to the question that made it difficult for you to answer, I was going to ask you to leave our audience with a question that they should answer, and you just did without me asking it. Chinedu Nwokeafor, thank you so much for being my guest. I always enjoy the conversation from the comments that we see on our episodes that feature you. People are absolutely engaged with your responses as well. Listen, it is impossible for you not to have some form of a reaction whenever Chinedu Nwokeafor joins our podcast. And in that vein, please go ahead and like this episode. And I hope I have done my due diligence in encouraging you to subscribe to I Love My HBCU ? Wherever you get your podcasts. Yours always in HBCU love. See you next episode. Thanks, Chinedu.
My pleasure.
You've been listening to I Love My HBCU ? Let's keep the conversation going as we share our stories and encourage more practical support of HBCUs, whilst of course holding each other accountable. Don't forget to follow and subscribe for the latest episodes. Until next time, love and lift your HBCU.